Thank you. As Amy said, my name is Lauren Sachs, and it is truly my honor to offer some words about loss and grief this evening. When I began to contemplate the aftermath of early loss, it occurred to me that losing a loved one almost always prompts a fundamental question: how do I find my way forward from loss? As a mental health professional who's worked as a therapist and provided support to families experiencing fetal demise, you might guess that I'm here to share things that I learned in my master's degree program or offer up expertise I gained from my social work practice. However, neither my education nor my professional work prepared me for my own personal and profound experience of loss 5 years ago. In late August of 2020, about 6 months into the global pandemic, I was widowed without warning when my 49-year-old husband died of a massive heart attack following a casual morning walk at the Toledo Botanical Garden. Losing my husband Brad so suddenly in the midst of my mid-40s was a shock to my system, turning my world upside down, along with that of our 2 school-age daughters. My head was filled with questions as my heart was full of sorrow. Why did this happen to me and my family? Where should I turn for support? Will I ever find happiness again? And though it was not a conscious question in the earliest days, I was already at some level pondering that question that I already posed this evening. How do I find my way forward from loss? In many ways, though the questions are the same for all who are bereaved, the answers may differ from person to person. The day my husband died was followed by a night with no real sleep. After tossing and turning in my bed, I knew I had to do something to address the overwhelming feelings I was experiencing. In my case, I got up the next morning and I went for a run on the treadmill that had been largely gathering dust in our basement. Though I had not run since participating in middle school track, it became a habit that allowed me to find some emotional release. At the same time, I think it was also a way to escape, to metaphorically run away from the intensity of my emotions. Like so many in grief, I desperately wanted to avoid the anguish I was feeling. Eventually, through the help of my therapist, and with the realization that I could not run all day long, I discovered that I had to stop pushing my feelings away. In fact, I came to find that the more I allowed my heartache its full expression, to truly feel my feelings, the better I could manage the pain of my grief. Ultimately, I believe that the more honest I was with myself about my heartache, letting my feelings wash over me when I needed it, the more I was prepared to start down a path of healing. Developing a yoga practice in which I incorporated meditation along with movement further allowed for greater resilience and emotional regulation. As I continued working with my therapist, she also suggested that I consider joining a spousal loss support group. Early on, I was unsure whether I would be able to relate to my fellow widows and widowers given my relatively young age and the fact that I still had children at home. But I soon discovered that the differences we had in terms of our background, life experiences, and stories of loss paled in comparison to the myriad ways we fundamentally understood one another. Attending my support group became a source of tremendous comfort, helping me feel less alone in my grief and allowing me to find a safe haven where I felt fully seen and accepted. Another way I personally found some solace was through writing. I began journaling as a way to remember my husband and all the wonderful stories he used to share with our family. In the early days, this writing was just for me, but I soon realized that I had a rare vantage point based on both my professional background and also that of my husband. Since my husband was a physician with a specialty in hematology and oncology, His views on life and loss were not only unique, they were also very uplifting. Brad was full of humor and had a larger-than-life personality. Given all the suffering and death he witnessed in his practice, Brad approached every day with a zest and enthusiasm, which reflected his remarkable perspective on the human spirit and on the frailty of life. As I wrote, I came to see that Brad's gusto for life, which stood in stark contrast to the suffering he witnessed in his practice, meant that he would want me and our daughters to continue living fully, even in his absence. With this in mind, I could let go of some of the survivor's guilt I had been feeling and give myself permission to live and love again. Leaning into Brad's approach to life also allowed me to infuse my family with one of his greatest strengths, playfulness. Brad had a full-throated laugh and an almost childlike spirit that could change how we perceived most any situation. One example of Brad's levity came on a Disney cruise with our daughters. On the trip, Brad managed to stow away an adult-sized Olaf costume that he wore during a Frozen-themed celebration. Wearing the costume at the event, he took great joy in embarrassing our daughters, but he also loved seeing the surprise and laughter that it evoked from our family and fellow passengers. When Brad died, I recall trying to incorporate humor into my day-to-day interactions with our daughters, whether it be through telling some of his stories or joking around with my girls the way he had always done. This lightheartedness helped us dissipate some of the despair we felt after Brad died. A few years after losing Brad, knowing I could not change what had happened in my own life, I came to a place where I was able to use my own pain to help assuage the agony of others. I began by sharing my writing on grief and resilience through penning a monthly column called Happy Tears. I then discovered I could give even more of myself, and I started volunteering at hospice and connecting with the newly bereaved. Working to bolster others in grief helped me honor my late husband's memory and made me feel like I was keeping an important part of him and his legacy alive. 5 years out from my loss, I can now honestly say that grief has changed me in incalculable ways, but it has also allowed me to grow and find more depth and meaning in my world. Instead of viewing grief as an enemy to be vanquished, I now see it as a patient teacher, one that has helped me find a sense of peace and purpose in the present. I also believe that fully embracing grief helped me to find my own way forward from loss, the one which all of us who are bereaved hope to find. As the Austrian poet and author Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, "Death has never remained an obstacle to life for a surviving individual, because its innermost essence is not contrary to us, but it is more knowing about life than we are in our most vital moments." He continues, "I always think that such a great weight with its tremendous pressure somehow has the task of forcing us into a deeper, more intimate layer of life so that we may grow out of it all the more vibrant and fertile." In other words, I believe that even though grief is full of intense pain and upheaval, once we allow ourselves to experience it fully, we can ultimately learn not just to survive in our lives, but also how to truly thrive. Though you may still be doubtful about your own path forward following loss, I know a few things about you since you chose to be here today. First, I want you to realize that no matter how isolating grief can feel, you are not alone. Indeed, just being here today places you in a community of mourners. Connecting with others in grief allows all of us to bear the weight of loss collectively, Also, since you chose to join this compassionate community today, I know that you value self-care. Somehow, you knew you needed to be here. That also tells me that at some level, you are allowing yourself to feel your feelings. Even if you are just starting on the path of healing, you have taken the first steps forward. Though the path may be hazy and dark, there is a light at the end of it that will continue to give you strength and help you to find your own way to healing and peace. Thank you.